I am the Programme Manager at the Neighbourhood Design Centre, and we're really excited to have so many folks with us today. If you would like to, please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to kind of hear who's in the room and where you're coming from. With me today are my colleagues Angelica Arias, our project coordinator, and our community design intern, Judy Tram. I'll hand over as well to Jordan Howard from Smart Growth America to introduce himself and the rest of the consultant team.
Hello, my name is Jordan Howard. I'm Economic Development Specialist with Smart Growth America. I'm project manager for this project effort. Other partners on this project are the firm Nelson Nygaard, Christopher Fornash, and Emily Oaksford have been taking on transportation portion of this project.
Thank you, Jordan. And I can't see anyone introducing themselves in the chat. I can see some familiar faces. I can see that we have some community folks, some agency folks, and some representatives from our elected officials' offices. So welcome, everyone. Please use the chat as we go through. We really want this to be an interactive session. We really want to have as much feedback as possible. So like Adam said, there'll be some moments where we pause and have open Q&A. There'll be some moments where we're using Slido. But if you drop anything in the chat, we will kind of pause and get to it when we have a moment. Okay. Okay. And feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat there as we start. So I just wanted to go over the goals of this meeting. The first is to inform folks about the study. There's many people that were in our stakeholder groups and also in the first community meeting, but there's also some new faces, so really kind of informing and kind of recapping on why we're here and what we're doing. The second goal is to get your feedback. We want to understand how you feel about the proposed routes and if they meet community need. We also want to know what we've missed. And also what we should know as we move towards finalising our recommendations for this study. We're also here, so goal 3, we're here to answer questions and queries. If there's anything that you want to know, that we haven't covered, then we'll be happy to answer any questions. And if it's a question that we can't answer, we will take that question and we will get back to you via the project page. And so just a bit of a recap on the project background. This study evaluated pedestrian and bicycling safety and access to Southern Avenue and Naylor Road metro stations via the Oxon Run Park Trail in Hillcrest Heights, Maryland. And this followed recommendations in the Greater Washington Partnership's 2020 report, Building the Transit-Orientated Region for Prince George's County. And some of the key things that we were looking at is to understand how we maximise Oxon Run Park's ability to serve the greater community, and to also build on existing amenities and improve access to Oxon Run Park to increase residential demand and promote health equity. And these recommendations were consistent with the 2014 approved sector plan. We also took into consideration a lot of existing reports and studies. And it's important to note here that the study focused on the Prince George's County side, but we really, because we know Southern Avenue is, the border between DC and Prince George's County, we really wanted to understand this in collaboration with the DC side and key stakeholders and community members. And thank you for everyone who's introducing yourselves in the chat. So the project goals, the overall goal of the project is to improve the neighbourhood connections, promote health equity and stimulate economic growth. And so the team assessed existing pedestrian safety and access to both Southern Avenue and Naylor Road metro stations through the Oxon Run Park Trail, and also looked at surrounding neighbourhoods in Hillcrest Heights, Maryland and DC. The team also evaluated potential connections and routes between the two stations, and then we developed concepts to improve the pedestrian and cycling experience in the area. And as we've said many times, community engagement is a key component of this study, and we wanted to centre the experience of people that live, work, shop and worship in the area. And so I'm going to hand over to Jordan to talk a bit about our focus area here.
Thank you, Sophie. So the focus area may be familiar to a lot of you. We will focus on two particular areas. One, our project extent, which is our project extent, which is about the 1/4 mile buffer, and that's the first circle that you see. And then what we call the catchment area, which is the 1/2 mile buffer around it. Within the first project extent area, that's kind of our walk shed, and that's a place that is comfortable within about a 10-minute walk from any specific destination within that area. In this particular case, the proposed route and or trail. Whereas the catchment area is the area defined kind of within this 1/2 mile of the trail, and it's much larger than the walk shed. And areas within this catchment area, but outside the walk shed, have their routes to the trail impeded either by highways, streams, or otherwise disconnected. So when we're looking at the routes, kind of keep these two areas in mind, both the 1/4 and 1/2 mile area. Next slide, Sophie. So the next couple slides show our site visit and the pictures that we took. This is the focus area and the actual on the ground conditions. You can see the Hillcrest Heights Community Center, things like the Southern Ave Metro Station, the retention ponds, the Oxon Run Drive. Next slide as well, Sophie. As well as some areas closer to the Naylor Road Metro Station as well. So kind of looking at this, all of our maps begin in the east towards Naylor Road, going west towards Southern Avenue. And that this is our large focus area. Sophie.
Thanks for presenting the focus area, Jordan. As Adam mentioned earlier, we are going to present some questions throughout the presentation, and we will be using Slido to do so. If you all can scan the QR code on the right or enter slido.com on your device and type in the code #PGC Southern Avenue. We will shortly present the next question, the first question. And if you are not able to do so on Slido, you can feel free to answer the question in the chat. So the first question is, do you live, work, worship, go to school, shop, catch the metro, or use the park in the focus area? And like I mentioned before, feel free to enter your responses in the chat as well if you are not able to access Slido. We'll just take a few minutes to do so. And if you'd like to elaborate what other activities you all do in the area, please feel free to come off mute or type it in the chat. We'd like to know. So it looks like Other is taking the lead. Does anyone want to come off mute and kind of explain what these other activities might be? Okay. Someone said occasionally pick up food nearby. Working on Petra's proposed new housing development on Southern Avenue. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you for answering the first question on Slido. Sophie, if you can go on to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of folks are catching the metro as well. That's a popular activity. So I'm just going to recap a little bit of what we heard from community meeting number 1. And I think this also kind of captures a lot of the feedback that we got in the more focused stakeholder meeting as well with the community. What we heard, and we kind of condensed this into some community goals. We asked many questions about the routes, and this kind of fed into these goals. And so what we heard was the route should prioritize safety for pedestrians and cyclists. We also heard that the route should create a feeling of personal safety for area users. So that was something that we discussed last time, you know, not only traffic safety, but personal safety was something that was very important. We also spoke about equitable development and how this should be encouraged. There was also some comments regarding this should be beautiful as well. And so I think one thing that we kind of have considered when we're looking at the routes is kind of these opportunities for landscaping and placemaking. They're not part of this scope of this study, but we've kind of had that in mind kind of as we've been evaluating the routes. You know, and that will kind of be part of the recommendations to really consider how we take these forward with those types of elements as well. And so we have another quick Slido for folks that joined the first meeting or were part of those discussions. We'd really like to know if you think those goals capture the priorities shared at the last meeting. So if you could either scan the QR code or kind of have the Slido app open in your browser, or just drop in the chat, you know, what you think about those community goals that I just shared. And I'd love to kind of elaborate on kind of if we've somewhat captured. We'd like to know what we missed as well. So please do either use the chat or unmute if you can possibly elaborate on kind of somewhat, or we can get to that when we pause for Q&A at the end of the next section. I think I see 5 responses here, and there's a few more people than 5, but I'd love to, like I said, pick up on kind of what we've missed. I I think it's positive for us to know that there's no votes yet. But yeah, we'd love to kind of hear more from you all about that. Okay, well, thanks everyone. Like I said, we'll pause at the end of this section and potentially kind of pick that up on anything that we've missed that we should be including. And so this is again a bit of a recap on what was shared at community meeting number 1. We were looking at the kind of route criteria, and we were looking at the community goals, but also the route criteria from the scope of the study as well. And so the desired route should serve the community by providing a pedestrian connection between Southern Avenue and Naylor Road metro stations, and then also the desired route should serve as a pedestrian connection between Mississippi Avenue Southeast and Southern Avenue and Good Hope Road and Naylor Road. And so that's again something to consider as we kind of move forward into looking at each of those routes again with the updates that the team have provided. And I'm going to pass to Jordan to talk through that evaluation framework.
Great, thank you, Sophie. So as you can see on here, when we evaluated the proposed connections that we first presented at the first community meeting, and then we reevaluated and will present in a moment, we focused on these metrics: complete streets connectivity, road safety and security, travel time and convenience, environment and sustainability, public interest and support, like this, implementation and feasibility. And within each of those metrics, we had things in the sub-metrics to keep in mind when we're thinking about complete streets. We wanted to close the gap and connect the area to each other, and we want to make sure that this aligns with existing plans and projects. When we talk about road safety and security, we want to improve the quality of the route, and we want to improve user safety, both from a personal and a pedestrian and bike and non-automotive standpoint. Travel time and convenience, we'd like this route to serve as many people as possible and reduce travel times. And from environment and sustainability, we'd like to encourage a mode shift towards biking and walking to increase foot traffic in the area. We want to make sure that whatever is ultimately selected has the public support, is an equitable selection as well. And for implementation and feasibility, that this leverages opportunities for future economic growth, and the selection itself is both feasible and affordable for the area. Next slide. So these are the updated routes that we have come up with. You can see they start over east by the Naylor Road metro station and go west towards and sometimes beyond the Southern Avenue metro station. All the routes are in unique segments, and that allows us to consistently evaluate the performance of each route segment across each of the metrics. And we just put in the chat that you can follow along in Google with these maps. The link is in the chat. So before we get into these updated routes and connections in detail, we can take any questions that anyone has.
And feel free to drop questions in the chat as well, or unmute. There is a raise your hand function on Teams as well, so any way you want to connect with us, please do.
Okay, seeing none, we can move on to the first proposal. So following are our updated routes and connections based on some of the feedback that we got at the first community meeting, as well obviously as the evaluation metrics we just presented. So this first proposal starts over at the east at Naylor Road Station, going along Oxen Run Drive. It would then cut through by that retention pond just east of the Southern Ave Metro Station and go along Southern Avenue. So for this one, this creates a shortcut between Southern Avenue and the Metro Access Road and adds connectivity to the bike and pedestrian network. And the trail along the pond that you see there just east of the Southern Ave Metro Station has potential recreational benefits. However, the cons are that the shortcut wouldn't enhance these connections to or from the Metro Rail station, and it could be moderately costly due to engineering needs. And the route's off-street trail portion could feel unsafe during hours that are less frequented by pedestrians and bicyclists. So we'll have time for Q&A, but at any time through these, just drop something in the chat and we're happy to answer any questions. So the second proposal, again, starts at Naylor Road Avenue, going west along Oxen Run Drive, and then cuts closer into Southern Avenue Metro Station, and then going north towards Southern Avenue. And this really formalizes a pedestrian walkway through the Metro Rail Station parking garage, and that will really help to enhance pedestrian safety around the area. The cons are Metro Station hours may impact that ability for the connection to serve as a true 24-hour route. And the parking garage environment may make it a little less desirable due to either safety concerns through it or any aesthetics. So the third proposal, again, starting at Naylor Road Avenue, also goes west along Oxen Run Parkway, past the Hillcrest Heights Community Center. This one, though, deviates by going north along 23rd Parkway before going west towards Southern Avenue. So this one, following 23rd Parkway, this route's presence along the street would include a road diet, which would include a new two-way bicycle lanes, and that would connect to any potential road improvements on Southern Avenue and Roxton Drive. So the potential con is this route follows existing rights-of-way, so you wouldn't get any new off-street trail. So answering that question are friends and partners at Nelson Nygaard, utilizing some of these metrics. Basically, part of them are ease of construction in the right-of-way. Some of them are how many people they get served, anything on those evaluation metrics. And at the end, we'll show you our summary chart of how we kind of calculated this. Some of these serve a greater population than others. We had that at the when we had the first community meeting, when we had our initial routes, the population they would serve. So all of the metrics that we sort of settled on kind of goes into them, and each of the routes, some of them do a better job in some areas and some of them do a better job in other areas. So for just seeing this other question in the chat, the development timeline hasn't been set for any of these proposals. The point of this project is to settle on a preferred community alternative, factoring in all of the factoring in all of these metrics. Another project would then be used for official design and construction. So there is no difference right now, currently where we are on development timeline. 4, I didn't get to 4, Sophie, sorry. For this fourth proposal, starting east at Naylor Road Avenue, going along Oxen Run Drive, and it flows into the Metro Access Road west of the Southern Avenue Metro station going north along Southern Ave. This would improve Metro Access Road, which was not designed as a complete street. Most of it lacks any sidewalks or any other pedestrian or bicycle improvements on it, and it doesn't have any safe accommodations for bicyclists or pedestrians. The route does not have any direct access to the Metro Rail station and could require the removal of some parking for the sidewalk right-of-way and could not accommodate bike lanes without widening. Next slide. As of that question, I believe Adam could answer more if there are plans to widen Oxon Run Drive currently.
Thanks, Jordan. Not at present that I'm aware of, but we could obviously talk to our colleagues in DPW&T and get back to you on that, and we'll post those responses on the project webpage.
Thank you, Adam.
Jordan, you're muted.
Sorry for that. So thank you, Adam, for your feedback. For this fifth proposal, this is really the first of what would be a full off-street trail starting over at the Naylor Road Metro station. It would run through Oxon Run Park, kind of going over through the park system over towards Southern Avenue, and it would help complete the proposed Oxon Run Park Trail within this portion of the system. But the route would sort of be redundant with Oxon Run Drive, and portions of the route would require extensive engineering improvements. This would probably be the most costly of the proposed routes based on engineering and the grading and the drainage that would need to be included in this. Portions of this trail are also out of sight from the road, which may not assuage any potential safety concerns at times of the day where there is less pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Next slide, please. So this one would help complete the proposed Suitland Parkway Trail, which is adjacent to the Naylor Road Metro system. So this would go north from Naylor Road across down Southern Avenue. However, this route's alignment is farther from Prince George's County residents and would not help kind of create those safer connections along Oxon Run Park near 23rd Parkway or Oxon Run Drive. And portions of this route also present greater engineering challenges along Southern Avenue at Suitland Parkway. So next slide. So as promised, these are the route, this is the whole route analysis with our scoring key, things that either don't meet the criteria or meets and exceeds the criteria. Number 9 will be input after this meeting to reflect what we hear, here. So take a moment, you can kind of see where, in our opinion, based on these metrics, where each of these routes kind of score. And I see a question, yes. So we can now move on to feedback portion.
Thanks, Jordan, for sharing the updates on the proposed routes. So we are going to head back to Slido and ask a few more questions regarding these updated routes. So if you can scan the QR code if you haven't already, or go onto slido.com and type in the code hashtag PGC Southern Avenue. And once again, if you cannot use Slido at the moment, please feel free to type in the chat. and respond to the questions.
I think we have a hand up. Should we pause and respond to that question? Mr. Morrison, did you have a question?
Yes, I just wanted to see the route, the first route one more time.
Yes, of
if
course.
I could see.
And I think there's a question about Route 3 as well, so I can just kind of go back over these quickly as we kind of move towards getting feedback on the routes, and we can pause on that for a moment and maybe give a couple of minutes to recap there. And there was also a question, Mr. Borak, you have not missed the optional extension that reaches south of Southern Avenue Metro. We're actually going to be presenting this straight after the main routes and getting feedback on that as well.
Thank you.
And I think that's the cons of Route 3, and I think Jordan also dropped that in the chat there. Does anyone, is there any others that folks would like me to kind of go back to pause on? And welcome, Brenda. I just saw you join us.
Thank you, Sophie.
So we've just gone through all of the routes. So I'm just I'll put them all up on the screen just for a moment. There's also the My Maps as well, so you can kind of look at them in your browser, and we will, as mentioned in the chat, be sharing all of this information after the event. And Angelica, I think, just dropped the My Maps back in the chat as well for folks who have just joined us. So this is kind of recapping on where we are on Proposal 5.
Sophie, can we go back to number 2 as well, please? We had a request to go back to number 2.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'll pause there for a moment. Okay. And finally, Proposal 6 again. I'll just pause for another few seconds on there. So anyone who wants to can have a recap of that one, and then I'll hand back over to Angelica with our next Slido.
Yeah, if you haven't already, please scan the QR code or type in slido.com and type in the code #PGC Southern Avenue to be able to answer the questions. So we ask if you all can please rank the routes, 1 being your favorite and 6 being your least favorite. The way you'll be able to achieve this is if you press or click on each of the proposals from favorite to least favorite, and they should appear in the box below the question. And you'll be able to see the number of your ranking to the left of that option. So if you have any questions, please feel free to come off mute or type it in the chat. Okay, so far we have 2 responses. We'll give folks another minute or so to continue responding to the question.
Can we get to 10 responses? We have 8 right now.
Tracy says in the chat that they vote for 4. Thank you, Tracy. All right, well, thank you all for participating. It looks like proposal 4 is taking the lead, and proposal 3 coming in second. So it's great to see. Now we ask you all to explain the reason for your choice. So if you can type in the chat or type in the Slido, and we will kind of be observing everyone's responses.
Or if anyone wants to unmute at this point as well, please, please share verbally as well. Anyone else have any reflections or want to kind of discuss the reason for their choice? Perhaps someone who kind of voted for route 4. What was the reason for choosing that route? Thank you. And I think that's great feedback. I think one of the reason for one of the routes going through the parking garage was that it was already being used by residents, so we wanted to kind of reflect that, but can understand how that also is a challenge, which is why we kind of put it as a con as well. Okay. Okay, have we heard from everyone who wanted to share? Does anyone want to elaborate on their answer here? Okay, I'm going to move on to okay, Eli. I think maybe you could elaborate on that point.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi there.
What I meant was that Route 4 seems to go south along Oxen Run Drive, and then it sort of wraps around the metro station and then continues northeast on Southern Avenue. Route 1 looks like the kind of tail end of that crosses the park next to that small retention pond or lake. I was thinking it might make sense for where that tail of Route 4 kind of ends. It could loop back along that same small part of Route 1 next to the lake, so it kind of created a closed loop at that end.
I'm coming back to the loop here just to kind of elaborate on that. Okay.
But so it's either Route 1 or Route 3. Maybe it's Route 3. Okay, Route 3 crosses the park on, what is that, 23rd? What that says, 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
And Route 4 comes up Southern Avenue to that point.
Yes.
So closing that loop would seem to make some sort of sense, rather than just terminating it at, I understand that's to pick up people from across the street, but that would allow people from across the street to also connect to Naylor Road without having to walk down Southern Avenue and then come all the way back up.
Thank you. And I think that's a really good point. And I think that's also kind of goes back to the slide that Jordan shared about the segments. So these are, as we kind of move towards finalizing these, we can also think about perhaps taking on this feedback and thinking about what a hybrid route looks like. And you'll see that as we kind of come to the additional add-on as well. And thanks for the points in the chat, and no problems. I'm glad you got it working. just a point on the parking garage not being ideal as a preferred route. Does anyone have any other kind of comments or responses based on the last points or discussion? Please feel free to put a hand up. Also, any questions if something isn't clear or you'd like some more explanation of a particular point or route? Okay, and discussing the kind of commercial area and not housing, is that a point that others shared as well, or can we, whoever made that point, would you like to kind of elaborate on that as well? Okay, well, thanks all. I'm gonna hand over to Jordan just to talk about the proposal add-on that was mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So this was added by Nelson Nygaard as a potential proposal add-on to essentially any of the route options. And this add-on would help add additional safety accommodations along Southern Avenue. It would also go towards a job center at the United Medical Center and go across the proposed Petra development, which is just west or a bit west of the Southern Avenue station. Of course, this additional extension could add cost to the project. Additionally, from a jurisdictional standpoint, this route is entirely controlled by DC. So you would have to work through those jurisdictional challenges on this, as opposed to most of the other routes. The largest portion of them are within Prince George's County. But we wanted to show this because this is a potential addition. This has potential benefits to the community as well.
And we just wanted to pause here and have folks share any thoughts on the proposed add-on there as well. As Jordan said, that could be included in most, in all of the routes suggested. And feel free to use Slido. It is not a bridge. It is kind of improving the existing infrastructure along Southern Avenue there. And thanks, Tom. A comment that direct paths work well around other metro stations. Any other kind of reflections from folks, whether this is a good idea to include this as an add-on for routes? Is that a good investment? And is it going to have steps? I don't believe so, because it is just improving the existing road there, and we'll kind of go on to next about what this could actually look like. So perhaps when we get to that, that will kind of help you visualize that. One of the options does have a level change, but that was the previous option where we kind of the route that connects past the retention pond. I think we'd want with any routes, and then kind of to Tiffany's point earlier, to ensure accessibility and meet and exceed any ADA requirements in that infrastructure. Okay, thank you. And I think there's a couple of comments, you know, that it does make sense to improve the infrastructure, particularly with kind of a large development there. And then also for folks who access United Medical Centre, which is a large employer, and there's plenty of folks walking from the metro to United Medical. And the question on streetlights for safety. So the scope of this study doesn't include designing in the kind of light infrastructure, but we would want to make recommendations that any improvements really enhance the pedestrian safety, including the lighting along these routes. And that's great to know. UMC has a bike share station. Great. Okay, so we're going to move into looking at the design options that have been prepared by our consultants at Nelson Nygaard. So really starting to kind of visualize what these improvements would look like. And as I've said before, it's important to note that this is still extremely conceptual. There's been no significant engineering. That would be the next step in this project, but really trying to get kind of general feedback on these concepts and how folks are feeling about them. So first we're going to look at Oxon Run Drive. So we have the existing up there of Oxon Run Drive, where we have 2 lanes with a parking lane. In this picture, we have sidewalk on one side next to the park, and we know that that isn't consistent. There are gaps in that sidewalk. In this image, there's no sidewalk on the neighborhood side, but there is as you kind of go further up Oxon Run Drive. So there's kind of an inconsistency with the existing sidewalks, and so the proposal here would be the addition of a 2-way protected bike lane on the park side. This would mean that the vehicle lanes would be slightly narrowed, and then also to make sure that there's a sidewalk on both sides of the street that is continuous between Naylor Road and where this route will connect. So that's kind of the proposal for Oxon Run Drive. You can see underneath we have this sketch that illustrates that as well. You know, keeping the sidewalk buffer making sure that that is a protected bike lane, and then ensuring that we're creating those connections where we have a missing sidewalk along Oxon Run Drive.
Okay, so now we are going to present a set of questions asking you all to rate the proposals for the design options. So first up is the Oxon Run Drive proposal that we just shared. If you all can rate 1 star if you feel that it is poor, or 5 stars if you feel that it is an excellent design proposal. And we will discuss some of these answers later on after we present the design options.
And feel free to use the chat as well. We'd love to have a few more folks contribute to these Slido questions. I don't know if anyone's having some technical difficulties, but please do unmute or drop comments in the chat if you can't use the Slido app. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next piece, which is 23rd Parkway. And there's 2 options for 23rd Parkway. So as you can see from this existing picture, 23rd Parkway, we have 2 lanes on both sides of the road. There's no parking. We do have sidewalks on both sides, but they are narrow and they're not in great condition. 23rd Parkway is also kind of a gateway to Prince George's County from DC. There's a bridge there. There's actually a lovely view down to the stream on 23rd. And so there's some of the existing conditions. You know, we do know that there's issues of speeding here, but it's really not a road that has a lot of traffic and congestion. And so the proposal here for option 1 is actually to propose a new median on 23rd Parkway, keeping but improving the existing sidewalks and buffers, and then also introducing a 2-way protected bike lane as well. And this I think it's also important to note that that Route 3 is the route that has 23rd Parkway primarily.
I think we have a question in the chat asking if 23rd is between Southern and Oxon Run Drive.
Yes, exactly, Eli. It's the road that connects Southern Avenue and Oxon Run Drive.
Yeah, so if you all could rate this proposal for 23rd Parkway, and once again, 1 star will represent it being a poor proposal, or 5 stars for an excellent. Thank you, Joy. It looks like 5 is taking the lead for this proposal.
Yeah, I'd also like to hear from folks who didn't rate this highly as well, and kind of also to understand why that is. We can perhaps bring that up at the end when we ask for more feedback, and thank you. Thank you everyone for participating. And so the second option for 23rd Parkway, and this is a slightly different image, a little bit further back, showing the bridge I mentioned there, is instead of having the median, it's again improving the existing sidewalks, then creating that buffer, having the two-way protected bike lane there instead of that median. And then also considering widening that sidewalk where we have that where we have the bridge, where you lose that kind of buffer area as well. Okay, and thanks, Joy, for using the chat, I think. I think less popular. That's what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing there, and again, we'd like to open up for discussion.
I'm gonna shoot you this thing, and maybe you can. I don't know.
Okay, so now we're looking at the Metro Access Road, and I think some of the issues with the existing Metro Access Road is that the sidewalk, you know, there are gaps in sidewalk provision, kind of there's sidewalk up to where the parking garage is, but then after that there's not really any sidewalk, and so the recommendation here is actually thinking about a multi-use path. So recognizing that the road is two ways already, and so kind of the bike lane kind of in the road might not be the easiest thing, and recognizing that if we give a good wide path, that can be used as a shared space.
Yep, so if you can all take the opportunity to rate this proposal, that would be great.
Hi, Tiffany. Yeah, I can go back to that. I think, I don't think that should disrupt this, this poll. So just bear with me a second. Metro access road there. I can go back to that. And Tom, I noticed your point, the two options that were just voted on were dramatically different. Are you referring to 23rd? Yeah. And could you elaborate on that in terms of the third option? And feel free to unmute.
Hello. Yes, the two options, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, the two options were dramatically different. To my eye, I look at the one showed planting strips that provided safety to the pedestrians on the outside where the sidewalks were. And there was a median in the middle, and then the other one was just pavement. And the one looked like it looked like I said, it had planting strips at a median planting. It was not everything I would want to see, but the next one looked like it was just where you crossed the bridge. And but those looked like you were proposing them as more than just crossing the bridge.
Yeah, we take that feedback and we'll take that back to Nelson Nygaard. I can see your point. It's kind of, yeah, they're very, very different, and something in between might set the right tone. So we will provide that feedback to them. And I think I just wanted to recognise and welcome our council member, Rodney Streeter. Hello, Mr. Streeter.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having this important meeting. This has been a priority for the council and certainly for this council member, as there's nothing more important than the safety of our residents. So I'm glad that you are, choosing this time to put together a plan that's going to make it safer for our communities. Appreciate all the work that you all are doing and look forward to partnering with you as we go through this process.
Thank you so much, and we really appreciate you joining us today, and we've had some wonderful feedback and participation.
Great.
Okay, so I just went back for some folks to the Metro Access Road proposal.
Sophie, may I ask a question?
Absolutely, Brenda.
So I'm just curious, is there a general push in the region to start incorporating bike lanes everywhere?
That's a really good question, and I think I'm going to defer to Adam from MNC PPC on that point.
Sure, thank you for the question. I mean, certainly one thing you may be aware of is the designation of Prince George's County as one of the Vision Zero counties. I know we have Tiffany Williams-Jennings on the call as well from DPW&T, but with an eye on Vision Zero, with an eye on improving accessibility for non-car users and non-vehicular motorized vehicle users, I wouldn't describe it necessarily so much as a push as an opportunity to examine where there are spaces where we can improve safety for non-motorized vehicle users, and of course that's cyclists as well as pedestrians. And so really, you'll know that we have a really good trails network in the county already, and there's a trails master plan which will set out where else we're looking to improve accessibility and increase the trails. As you know, this proposal came out of the study for the Greater Washington area, focusing on Prince George's County. And so the recommendation to look at this area and see where there's an opportunity for improving safety does lead us to look at both pedestrian and cycling infrastructure. I don't know I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
And Brenda, this is really an opportunity to get your input on some of these, and we have included in some of these proposals the protected bike lanes. So I think we also wanted to get folks' opinions on that part of these kind of concept designs as well. So I'll just go back to our poll, and seems like we're split 50-50 between 3 and 5 there. So we have one more location where we have some concept designs. Just want to make sure we haven't missed anything in the chat there. I think we're okay. And thanks, Joy, again for using the chat. And so the final proposal refers to Southern Avenue. So we have the existing conditions there along the stretch from 23rd over to the station, where we have the sidewalks and the buffer. But I think we are all aware that that Southern Avenue is a challenge when it comes to pedestrian safety. And so the proposal here is reducing vehicle lanes from 4 lanes to 2 to 3 lanes. So having one in each direction with a centre turning lane, and then having a 2-way protected bike lane, and improving the existing sidewalks and enhancing those buffer areas as well. And I think we have some questions in the chat. So So Eli, I believe that the 2-way protected bike lane would be on the right-hand side, if you're looking down Southern Avenue, like this image. That sketch is meant to be the same view there. And Chris, you have a comment. Chris is our colleague from Smart Growth America. I don't know if you wanted to kind of elaborate on that point and share.
I could say it, but it's just the question was about whether there's an overall effort to add bicycle lanes all around, which I think the short answer is yes, and that's what complete streets means. And the reason for that is because if you're trying, as Adam was saying, somewhat more fully, if the goal is to get people to be able to get themselves around by means other than always having to drive cars, then you have to provide the infrastructure. That's why we have good sidewalks. That's why we're talking about all this. But it turns out that bicycle usage is heavily influenced by the presence of such facilities or the absence of them. And a number of studies have shown it's amazing that to find that weather isn't nearly as much of a factor as people think, but the provision of proper facilities like dedicated lanes is a big factor in how many people will use bicycle to get around in any area.
So Sophie, I'm curious, in this particular one, you're saying reduce vehicle lanes from 4 to 2-3 lanes. What does that mean? And wouldn't that affect rush hour traffic and just make it worse than it already is?
Yeah, so that's a great point, Brenda. You know, we know that Southern Avenue is busy on rush hour and that there is congestion. So this, you know, this proposal will need to factor all of that in. There will definitely need to be a lot of traffic studies before any of this is kind of put forward. And you know, I just want to remind everyone that this is still very much in the kind of concept stage for feedback and reflection. I think it's also important to note that any proposal on Southern Avenue would have to be in collaboration with DC because it's their jurisdiction, so there's jurisdictional challenges, and also you know, it would connect and complement what DC are already planning along Southern Avenue with their Vision Zero plans. So I'm going to kind of open up for some comments on this.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
So I'm actually quite fascinated by all this. And I think that as I look at this, the existing conditions of this picture that you have of Southern Avenue, it just sort of reminds me of gentrification. As I look at the existing picture and then I look at the picture below, and I cannot speak for all African American people, but I can speak for my neighborhood. And I live in Ward 8, and we have a tendency to drive or use buses. And then it just feels like the bike lanes are being imposed on us. And it looks like rather than being mindful equally, our mayor is doing everything through a framework of equity. So as I have this conversation, I'm thinking about that. And as we look at a sense of equity, it just looks like this is a vision of accommodating bikers more so than it is motorists. And we have a tendency to drive more than we do to ride bikes. Now, I don't know what happens in PG County, so I'm not at liberty to talk about them, but that's what I would say happens for those of us who live in Ward 8.6.
Thank you, Brenda. I think that's a really important point, you know, to understand the different modes of transport folks are using in the area. And you also mentioned that there's lots of folks that use the bus as well. And so looking at improvements, and I know that there is a study in the future that DC are doing on kind of improvements to the bus infrastructure in this area, and that's something that we considered, but really important points to bring forward. So thank you.
So I have a question as well.
Yeah, of course.
When, as you all have put this proposal together, did you look at future plans, development plans, as you reduce the lanes? Did you consider that it would preclude certain development along Southern Avenue, particularly on the Prince George's side that's still building out, and what impact that might have on future development opportunities?
Thank you, Council Member. Yes, well, there was a lot of research done for this study on, you know, looking at the sector plan, looking at those kind of future developments, and then also reaching out to folks who are kind of looking at the development of this area. This hasn't been evaluated as far as I'm aware, and Jordan, please jump in on this question as well, in terms of future growth, in terms of the evaluation metrics.
Yes, one of the, if we go back to slide, well, we can really go to 30 and even slide 20 on the evaluation metrics. One of the things that we consider, or will consider when we make our final recommendation for this line, will be future economic growth and how you can leverage future economic growth within this selection. So that will be at the forefront, absolutely.
Okay. And I'm just going to take us into this last question. I know that we're quite tight on time, and I can't believe we're almost at 8 o'clock. And I think that we've had some folks who have responded in the chat and shared, as Brenda and Councilman Distrita have, kind of questions, but we'd love to capture for folks who might not have responded. Are there any reasons for your ratings there? I think particularly folks who gave some of the options some low ratings, would really like to understand why you didn't like the proposals. It's really important at this stage for us to get that feedback while we are able to kind of change things based on comments and reflections. And I think, Tom, your point on safe biking that you've experienced elsewhere, have physically separated bike lanes and not just adding some bollards. So that's kind of another point for us to consider. Yeah, and I think those comments kind of speak to those other comments, you know, understanding what impact this might have on future development plans and traffic flow. So, you know, any recommendations need to ensure that there's correct traffic studies done to understand the viability of these proposals.
Sophie?
Yeah.
So I agree that, you know, these are obviously, you know, fairly conceptual at this point, and, you know, engineering study would have to be done and all that. But I also think that it's worth letting people know that although it's often assumed commonly that there's essentially a direct, you know, linear relationship between road capacity and volumes and, you know, what you have. So it's assumed if you add lanes, you know, you're accommodating more traffic you reduce it, you're going to lose capacity. That's not necessarily the case, and often turns out, depending on specific circumstances of the area and the overall network, that, for instance, a road that has a lane in each direction and a turn lane has plenty of capacity compared with the same road configured with 2 lanes in each direction. So many places, those 2 lanes in each direction have turned out not to be particularly efficient. And in converting to 2 and 1, the capacity is more than sufficient. Whether or not that's the case here depends on a lot of different things. We have to look at that. But it shouldn't be assumed that if you have fewer lanes, you necessarily have less capacity. Also, it's important to recognize that as long as the only viable way to get around is in an automobile, and that's the capacity you provided, that's what people will tend to do. There won't be a lot of people, on bicycles when you're not providing bicycle infrastructure. And to the extent that there are some people who do begin using bicycles in that area when it's made possible, that frees up capacity on the roadway. And so, the reason it works in some places like Copenhagen is precisely because they've provided the infrastructure in a way that makes it possible for people to get around in different modes, which ultimately makes it easier for those who have to use cars as well. So again, that's not to comment on the specific scenarios, because that would depend on a lot of different factors as have been identified. But I think it would be a mistake to think that showing an option with fewer lanes means you can't have development there. In fact, we have the most intense development where we actually have relatively less, car lane capacity.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Yeah. I want to, because this is a shared border, wanted to make sure that one philosophy doesn't dominate over the other. We seem, the district and Prince George's County seem to have a different approach to what they think about the way they travel around, and certainly I'm for reducing the carbon footprint, and I think making for healthier communities and having walkability and so forth and so on. But the majority of our residents they drive. And so I wouldn't want to have a scenario where we've made it more hostile for them to get around in a way that is most convenient and most comfortable for them. And so I as we talk through this, I just want to make sure that there's an understanding of the needs of both sides of that jurisdiction, which is why I mentioned what I did earlier.
Thank you, Council Member. I think some really, really important points for us to consider and reflections, and thank you, Chris, also for sharing your reflections as well. I'm just aware that we are at 8 o'clock now, so I just wanted to go through some timeline and next step slides. We're kind of currently at March 2022 and having our public community meeting number 2. We'll be looking in April to start drafting our report and looking for early summer to have that finalized. And just as a kind of reminder, this will be a report that is sharing recommendations for MNC PPC, and based on those recommendations, further studies will be done. And so some next steps. So poll results and feedback will be incorporated into the final recommendations. And as I just said, the team will submit a final draft, and the report will be published later in 2022. And I just want to open it up for any other kind of comments, questions or concerns. As I said, I know it's 8 o'clock. Our team can stay on and answer any questions for you all, but wanted to also just thank everyone for their time today, and thank you so much for all your contributions as well. It's been really important for us to hear that.
I wanted to say that I thought Chris made some very good points, and that what you're working on is a report, a study, and a plan. In other words, you're not producing an immediate build project. You're trying to identify what this area needs in order to support the metro so that people can walk, bike, otherwise access the metro, to make sure the metro ridership it maintains itself and increases. So as I hear and I respect that people do still drive a lot places and they drive to the metro, but this is a plan for today and for the future. And as things change and autonomous vehicles become more common, we're going to see a lot of changes. So I think you have to keep in mind that it's a report for today and a plan for tomorrow.
Thank you, Tom, for those points.
This is Bong. I just wanted to echo what Tom just said and also add to that. You know, I know with Vision Zero and Complete Streets, you know, all of that has, you know, ADA compliancy in it, and I know, you know, from a disabled community or older age community standpoint, I just want to, you know, I guess just make sure that during this whole, you know, development and planning thing, that you guys also, which I'm sure you guys are, but just to you know, make sure, I think you guys should reach out to the disabled community as well, as far as any enhancements that could be made to existing streets, or even to the Complete Streets projects, and bike lanes, and so forth.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really good point, and I think that you know, it's also a community that's very often overlooked, and it's so important to make sure that you know, all of this is accessible and meeting folks' needs. You know, I think when we were kind of doing our analysis of existing conditions as well, there's kind of you know, quite a few moments where sidewalks end and you're not sure, you know, there's no drop curb, and so yes, I think, you know, a detailed eye on all of those opportunities for accessibility in those areas is really important, and the best way to understand that is speaking to folks with lived experience.
Right, and honestly, it's not just. I mean, I know you just use it as an example, but it's not just the drop curves or the curb cuts. You know, it's also you know, for people with low vision or blindness, and you know, wheelchair users, even for able bodies who, you know, have you know, a couple of kids in strollers, or even businessmen who have their suitcases on rollers. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments or questions? I don't know, Adam or Jordan, if you had some reflections or anything that you wanted to share.
I only wanted to echo my your thanks for everybody who's put in the time and effort this evening. We really appreciate all of the comments and the debate that we've had. It's very important for us to hear from the community, and this is obviously not the final time. It might be the last community meeting for this specific report, but clearly as things get developed and as things move into any design phase that comes along, we would obviously be going back out to the community to talk more about the specific details. But for your participation this evening and for your comments, I really would like to thank everybody for everything that they've done this evening.
I'll merely agree with what Adam said. Thank you to everybody who came out and participated.
And as we mentioned before, this recording and this presentation will go up on the project page. And I think on that project page is Adam's contact details. If you have any further reflections, I think many people have my contact details, but I think they're also I thought they were on the last slide, but I'll make sure that that they're shared as well, in case there are any kind of anything that comes to you as you kind of go about your week and you want to share. So so thanks everyone again, and again thank you Councilmember Streeter for joining us and sharing your very valuable opinion.
Thank you very much, all of you, and for all the hard work you put into this project. Look forward to continuing our discussion and getting to the point we all want to be.
Thank you, everyone.